Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'll say that I recently wrote the first article, like a few days back or 2, 3 months back, like no, 2, 3 weeks back after the sort of the regime change in Nepal, and this was the first time I really engaged with this topic or Nepal overall. And for the preparation of this discussion is, I would say, yeah, first real engagement with Nepal. So it's also quite a new sort of a topic for me. And I think this is a little bit, I would say, important in so far that the regime change in Nepal was quite dramatic. And I think what has happened there has left some stereotypes about this overall, the global sort of Gen Z wave that is going on. Yeah, so I think it's good to deal with this, and would be also good to then take some, I would say, consequences for the overall so-called Gen Z wave that is going on. So overall agenda, like a brief recap of the events, then a general overview of Nepal, like because for me and I think for everyone here, this the question of Nepal is quite new. So I think it's good to have some context, some overall context of the country. So there'll be geographical, demographical, and economic overview, then a historical overview also, like history of Nepal and history of the communist movement. Why? Because the regime that was overthrown, one of the coalition party in the government was the Communist Party also. And why history of Nepal? Because the question of return of monarchy comes again and again. Because in 2008, monarchy was abolished, and then the communists sort of came to power quite often. Then the additional issues. Uh, the question of US influence, similar regime changes in the region, like in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and also the question of a possible return to monarchy is there. And finally, I'll give some thesis and then we can go into discussion. Um, yeah, just a geographical overview. Like this is, wait. Yeah, this is basically Nepal. It's a landlocked region, landlocked country. Like the Himalayan range goes like this. Historically, extremely less contact with China, more contact with India. Um, then, yeah, coming to the brief overview on 4th of September. 4th of September, the government banned 26 social media platforms, asking them to register locally. Social media platforms included Facebook, Meta, Instagram, YouTube, and such, WhatsApp, and all. And, the government was asking them to register locally and began blocking them, blocking those media platforms which are not complying with this order. The ban came as there was sort of an anger going on among the sort of the youth in Nepal regarding the lavish lifestyles of the kids from the political elites. So apparently, this is the narrative or the mainstream narrative. On 8th of September, the protests were mobilized, the protests were called for. The ban was immediately taken back. Protests turned quite violent, and very interestingly, they targeted the democratic institutions, including the parliament, Supreme Court, and many other sort of I would say, Republican state institutes, including the party offices of the communists. The politicians were also targeted. I think some also lost their lives. The Home Minister resigned on 8th of September. On 9th of September, the protest continued. The army was nowhere to be seen. Then finally, Prime Minister Kape Oli resigned along with the entire government. Army takes over, and there's a proper regime change basically takes place. 20 to 50 people died, 300 injured. New interim Prime Minister appointed under or the Sushila Karki as the new interim Prime Minister, a former Supreme Court judge. Okay. This has been considered as a strategic calamity for the Nepalese left. Why? Because the coalition government of Communist Party of Nepal, United Marxist-Leninists, and a National Congress was in power. However, according to Vijay Prasad, and I think rightly so, He characterizes it a center-right government, as a CPNUML is considered a right faction of the left. And I think in this presentation, I would definitely attempt to sort of show how this is a center-right government, and I think that's quite relevant for the discussion. Okay, from India, CPIM, definitely criticized the repression because there was repression, but also cautioned against the return of the monarchy. This caution is definitely quite strongly there. The Indian Communist Movement has also raised questions regarding the involvement of the US and the questionable role of secure army and the security apparatus. In Nepal, United Communist Party Nepal Maoist, Communist Party Nepal Maoist Center, and Communist Party Nepal Unified Socialist criticized the repression and also the ban on the social media platforms. You will realize during the course of this presentation that there is extreme infighting within the Nepalese communist movement. Okay, overall, the following general questions came up after this sort of regime change. First is the questions regarding the communist movement in general, like what is the state of the communist movement there. Then the question of US involvement in the context of its rivalry with China came up, which was sort of seen in Sri Lanka in 2022 and Bangladesh last year also. Questions regarding the possible return of monarchy have also come up quite strongly. Um, so these are the things that I'll discuss, but also first a general economic and demographic overview of Nepal also. Um, First, it's a landlocked country. 75% of the country is covered by the mountains, historically closed off to China. Like in this section, my overall source is Britannica. So I think in generally they are correct sources, but there could be some mistakes also. Demographic overview, a diverse linguistic, ethnic, religious demography, Tibetans and Indo-Aryan descent. Ruling families, historically, monarchy from Indo-Aryans and the Hindu community. 82% Hindus, 8% Buddhists, 5% Muslim, strong Hindu caste system, including the leadership of the communist movement there, like extreme, like from the upper echelons of the caste system. A very young country, three-fifths under 30. And I think this is a very important point to take into consideration, despite all the criticisms on the so-called Gen Z protests. These countries, the demography, especially also in Africa, in Morocco, in Madagascar, they're extremely young people overall. Overall, there's one major city, basically, or one city in Nepal, which is Kathmandu, which is also the capital city. Uh, Primary economic activities, mainly it's an agriculture is the main economic activity, employing 65% people. Manufacturing, 10%, manufacturing accounts for 10% of GDP, carpets, cements, garments, leather products, etc. Most of production from cottage and small scale industry. Source of foreign currency, earnings, services, tourism, remittance. And like remittance is quite, the share of remittance is quite surprising, 33% of the entire GDP. Like, that's actually quite an unbelievable number, 33%. Major obstacle in the economy, basically a mountainous landlocked country. And I think the geographical aspect of Nepal is something that has contributed to a extremely long rule of a Hindu monarchy, like not just a monarchy, not just, I would say, in a European sense, but a real proper monarchy, extremely strong feudalist elements, and a very backward stage of the bourgeois democratic revolution. I think the geography plays a major role there. The economy is heavily import dependent. Fuel, construction materials, fertilizers, metals, most goods, consumer goods are imported. Export are rice, jute, timber, textile. Import sources, India 63%, China 13%. Export destination, India 72%, China 11%. Main port access is in Kolkata, like it's here, like somewhere here. Okay, overall, there is a trade imbalance. Then some quite revealing economic numbers. Share of overall remittance, 33%. I think I would definitely look it up again, but this is an extremely high number. Uh, in 2024, there were 139,266 exit labor permits, like allowing government allowing the people to go out and work out of a total population of 30%, like a proper sign of country lacking basic economic infrastructure. 20% unemployment rate among the youth, extreme unequal wealth inequality, the richest 10% of population holding more than 26 times the wealth of the poorest 40%. Nepal faces deep inequality, unemployment, slow economic growth, weak industrialization, mass migration, poverty, food insecurity, and rising debt, and massive amounts of corruption. Then there was a 4-year IMF extended credit facility program, which was putting pressure on the government to basically return the money or the interest, which is why the government took steps to boost the revenue. And in direction of that, they introduced a digital service tax and a strict value added tax for the foreign e-service providers. And under these two initiatives, the foreign platforms had to register. And when they did not register, basically locally, the state responded by banning them, which became an overall trigger for the protests fueled by deep economic frustrations. That being said, from 2015, since the country became officially a secular federal country, I'll come to that. There has been an extreme, a massive poverty reduction from 36%. It's wrong here, from 36% to 15%, and it's acknowledged worldwide. And mostly there has been communist sort of a rule. Electricity access now at 99%, which is a major point because electricity is a major issue in Nepal. My overall class assessment of Nepal, which I've not read anywhere, but this is just my assessment. It's a state led by a close alliance between bourgeoisie and monarchy. Vijay Prasad calls it economy century-long of patronage economy. I think what he means here is in subservience of sort of imperialism, I would say. Overall, extremely backward state of bourgeois democratic revolution in the country. And I think a major reason why this is the case is because one, of course, geographical location, and also Nepal was not colonized by the British. Instead, they entered a compromise. And I think because of that, the anti-imperialist and the progressive elements could not develop in Nepal, unlike India. Okay, historical overview. Yeah, I think it's interesting to just know about it. Like accounts of 2,500 years old settlement, birthplace of Buddha. Since 4th and 5th century, Hindu rulers from upper caste have been ruling the country. Extensive relations with South and Central Asia since 5th and 7th, 6th and 7th century. Middle period, continuation of upper caste Hindu rule with influences of Buddhism. So yeah, modern period, mid 18th century, there is an establishment of a central unified state, which is a possible indication of coming onto scene of capital or commodity production. Interestingly, at the same time, there's a confrontation between the royal family, which I think represents a more centralized unified state, and the noble families, which want a more fractured rule, leading to the weakening of a weakened monarchy rule till the 1950. Till the 1950, there was also a compromise with the British Empire to preserve independence. Under this compromise, Nepal would provide the well-known Gurkha fighters that fought for British around the world. Like the Gurkha fighters are quite well known for fighting for British. They also accepted British guidance on foreign policy, and I think this has continued. This relation has continued with India also. I could be wrong, but this is definitely true in the case of Bhutan. Post 1947, after the British went away from India, it weakened the respective rule. This I think the noble families had sort of a stronger say in this monarchy, and this was weakened, which is why in 1950 there was a counter revolution that restored the sovereignty of the crown. The so-called revolutionary forces led by National Congress, which were inspired by the sort of the Indian National Congress, which was a strong bourgeois democratic anti-imperialist sort of political representative. This National Congress gained in stature. And also, up until 1950, Nepal was in extreme isolation, and this period ends. Okay, post 1950, constitutional monarchy. 1955, it joined the United Nations. 1959, constitution approved. Elections held. NC won a majority. 1960, government dismissed and sent to prison. 1963, constitution abolished, and King also gained the acceptance of China and India in this abolition. 60s, 70s, 80s, constant political clashes and crisis. This is a phase of people's struggle. Then in 1990, coalition interim government headed by the NC with the participation of moderate communists. They form a united left front. From 1990 onwards, there's a new phase of struggle for democracy. This is also the time when the Maoists also came onto the scene, or the Maoist movement developed in Nepal. 1991, establishment of multi-party system. In 1991 elections, NC won 110 seats out of 205. CPN, United ML, main opposition party with 69 seats. This is also a period of economic liberalization and privatization of some state-owned companies. Overall, till the 2008, the government is majorly led by the National Congress with brief period of CPN UML rule. Like I said, emergence of CPN Maoist also. 2001, killing of the king and the royal family members. The new PM belonging to, I think, NC enlisted the help of the US to suppress the Maoists. 2006, UN mediated government and CPNM peace deal. Under this peace deal, a temporary representation of Maoists in the Council of Ministers and also negotiations on arms and weapons. Maoists, however, still demanded an immediate dissolution of the monarchy. 2008, monarchy abolished and declared a democratic republic. Elections took place and Maoists also won more seats in the election. 2009, Maoists became United Communist Party of Nepal Maoist. Okay. Then post 2008 period of interim constitution, because in 2008 the monarchy is abolished and an interim constitution is put in place. A constituent assembly is set, which would formulate the constitution. And till 2015, there was constant struggle going on for the formulation of the new constitution of Nepal. Okay, 2008, UCPNM Maoist won more seats. Maoist leader Pushpa Kamal Dahal, popularly known as Prachanda, formed the coalition government. And the representative of the NC was appointed as the first president in Nepal. 2009, coalition government failed. Prachanda resigned. Madhav Kumar Nepal of the CPN UML became the prime minister. In 2010, he resigned after being pressurized by the Maoists, who were still the largest party. 2011, a new CPN UML candidate became the prime minister. By August 2011, his government collapsed and someone from UCPN Maoist assumed the office. 2012, entire assembly dissolved, like the Constituent Assembly is dissolved, as no progress made by the Constituent Assembly to draft the country's constitution. 2014, new elections. Sushil Koirala of NC comes to power in coalition with CP and UML. And during this period, in 2014, there are a series of natural disasters like avalanches, earthquakes in the country, in Mount Everest also, which pushed negotiations on the new constitution. Okay, 2015, finally, the constitution is negotiations are done. Nepal declared secular federal republic, and I think KP Sharma Oli, who was recently removed from power, became from CPN UML became the elected prime minister or appointed prime minister. In 2016, his government collapses, and from the Maoist, someone came to power. Then this Maoist also resigned. In 2017, the first proper election takes place, and CPN UML and UCPN Maoist, they merged to form Nepal Communist Party. Under this agreement, power sharing agreement, KP Oli from CPN UML would rule on the expectation that second half of the rule would be taken over by Prachanda. However, disputes arise. Parliament is unconstitutionally dissolved in 2022. In 2021, reinstated, where Oli lost a vote of confidence. 2017, disputes also started developing around the Millennial Challenge Corporation, a foreign assistance program established by US. And this is basically like an NED. This is basically like a national endowment for democracy sort of program. It basically is, we'll come to this later. It's basically another arm of national security strategy of USA. The NC supported it. Communists initially were extremely opposed to it. However, MCC was finally ratified in 2022 with the support of many communists. Okay, then finally 2025 regime change, interim government appointed with mediation of the army. Fresh elections are set for March 2026. The interim prime minister is Sushila Karki. She is pro-monarchy. She has pro-monarchy sentiments, and the army actually wanted an even more pro-monarchy candidate. CPN, UML, and many, even in the NC, have rejected the legitimacy of the Karki government. Also, in this so-called Gen Z movement, there are ideological differences. One section wants the current constitution, another section wants a new constitution with the establishment of a direct elected executive and the removal of parliament. Overall, since 1990, 32 governments have changed position, and 13 since 2008. Okay, a little bit now on the history of the communist movement. This is a little bit confusing section, I would say, but I think it's worth it to just go through it. I think this will explain the deep crisis that the Nepalese communist movement is in, like extremely, I would say, opportunist, extremely compromised, I would say. And I think one thing that comes up again and again is that the communist movement, or the fighting in the communist movement, is sort of reduced to a very, how do you say, fights between the personalities also. Okay. Historically, there has been strong influence of the Indian communist and the anti-imperialist movement. However, the entire history of the Nepali communist movement has been compromised by pro-feudalism and comprador elements. And, and the question of monarchy, relationship to monarchy, runs as a red thread in the split in the Nepali communist movement. Like again and again, they're splitting on the question of what their relationship to the monarchy should be, on the question of monarchy. This is also relevant because like everyone, monarchy, the bourgeoisie, and the communist also, everyone belongs to the upper caste. So this has allowed inroads for opportunist elements. This is something not so strongly seen in India, I think because of the ideological strength of the Indian anti-imperialist struggle overall. Of course, these accusations also come up in India also, like the influence of the upper caste opportunism, but in Nepal, it's extremely strong, I would say. Okay, so 1949, CPN is established. Pushpa Lal is the general secretary. CPI played a major role in this. Already disputes arise whether memberships should be given to anyone with Rana as the last name. Rana was the ruler, monarch in Nepal. However, Ranas are normally quite wealthy, so there was quite a dispute about this. Immediately, however, there are sympathies for the feudal elements, monarchy elements in the party. 1953, First Party Congress, one faction under the pretext of fighting left error, left radicalism, endorsed monarchy, like a pro-monarchy sentiment. Pushpalal is removed and a pro-monarchy candidate is made general secretary. In 1960s, there are practically two factions in the party, with minority being the anti-monarchy. 1966, first split in the Nepal communist movement. Pro-royalist, gradually, I think overall there's pro-monarchy elements, but these pro-monarchy elements were becoming increasingly sort of, how do you say, delegitimized in the communist movement there for right reasons also. 1970s, there is a peasant revolt led by one particular communist line called Jhapa District Committee, JDC. Okay, and in meantime, I'm also not so well, like I don't fully understand this, but in meantime, there are two factions that split from the Pushpalal faction, which now form CPNML. 1978, Pushpalal died. 1979, another faction formed from CPNML, and it's now CPN Manmohan. In meantime, by 1988, Pushpalal's party, run by his wife, merged with CPN Manmohan to form CPN Marxist. 1990, a unified left front is built. CPN Marxist collaborates with, not unites, but collaborates with the National Congress to overthrow the partyless system. Like it was still a partyless system. 1990, somehow a new party comes onto the scene, CPN United Marxist-Leninists of the Kape Oli, who was now recently overthrown, comes onto scene from these two parties. The program of CPNUML is People's Multi-Party Democracy, which basically meant an endorsement of liberal democracy, electoralism, and it was considered revisionism, a strong revisionism. 1990s, rise of the Maoist movement. 1993, CPML formed from CPNUML somehow. I don't get this because CPNML was already formed earlier. Yeah. Then there was also another communist line in the 1970s called Central Nucleus, which was the precursor of the Maoist movement. The Central Nucleus, in 1970s, there was a debate basically on the question of whether they should vote for a referendum to choose between a reformed party-less system or a multi-party democracy. Like these were the two choices: a reformed party-less system in Nepal or a multi-party democracy. And the question was whether the communist movement should take part in this referendum. Because, of course, the question, I think, a legitimate question during this time would have been like, taking part in this question would provide legitimacy to sort of the rule of the monarchy. Yeah, I think this was the overall debate. And this Central Nucleus line boycotted this referendum, 1978 referendum. From Central Nucleus line, CPN Fourth Convention formed. And then from CPN Fourth Convention, CPN Masal came out. This faction was apparently very much against the boycott of the elections, of the referendum. Out of CPN Masal came CPN Mashal. In 1989, CPN Mashal orchestrated a failed bomb explosion, and also party adopts Maoism as its ideology. The party did not join the United Leftist Front of the 1990s, which was fighting for a multi-party democracy. Okay, 1991, I think, there's multi-party democracy is finally established. CPN Mashal and CPN Fourth Convention joined to form CPN Unity Center. Unity Center renamed to CPN Maoist, which carried out 10 years long armed struggle. It is argued that establishment of People's Republic or dictatorship of proletariat was not among the aims of this party. Okay, at some point, CPN Unity Center united with Maoists. I think Maoists were still outside of the party system after these Maoists came into the mainstream, and they formed United Communist Party of Nepal Maoist. I think the main Maoist communist party currently. First elections after 2008, these Maoists became the largest party. 2013, second election for the Constituent Assembly. Like we remember, in 2008, there's a Constituent Assembly elected to form the new constitution, and they are deliberating and not able to come through. So there's another election for the Constituent Assembly where CPNUML and the United CPN Maoist became second and third largest parties. And I think the largest party would have been the National Congress. 2015, Constitution finally adopted. 2017, first proper elections, like I think I sort of covered it already. CPN UML and CPN Maoist united into forming Nepal Communist Party at this point, after their coalition won the election. Kape Oli from CPN UML and Prachanda from CPN Maoist would jointly lead the party. 2020, tensions already arise. I already talked about, like, in NCP, as Oli was asked to quit one of the roles, party chief and prime minister, and he refused. Funnily enough, there was another party named CPN, and like before this new NCP, or basically, and the Supreme Court asked this new NCP to split back into the old parties. Eventually, CPN Unified Socialists split from CPN also. This split that took place, like CPN UML and CPN Maoist Center joined to form Nepal Communist Party, and in 2020 and 2021 they split once again. This split, the lesson of the split is taken by CPIM to give out this slogan, unity in action before organizational unity, where they argue that despite having sort of same tactical or even strategic goals, there needs to be, first of all, unity developed at an action level to find out whether the cadres of two different parties, of two different disciplines, can come together and work as a single party. And clearly here, the conditions were not ripe for developing a one unified party of CPN UML and CPN Maoist Center. Which is, and the question of unified organization is quite burning in India, because there are now, I think, 4 at least proper communist parties which have coming together strategically, but still they are not. CPM still basically, how do you say, does not allow or argues against immediate organizational unity. Okay, and then we are basically to the present, where CPN UML and the NC was in the government, and they were overthrown by the recent regime change. Part 3, we come to the UN sort of question, US question. There are definitely quite strong, I would say, reports of US involvement. I think it was really for quite some time organized by them. Hami Nepal, an NGO formed in 2015, organized the protest, called for the protest on 8th of September by providing logistical supports and routes for the protest. Like they called these protests on social media, and they were providing information about where the security forces are, where they are not, and they really coordinated the entire protest. Hami Nepal has National Endowment for Democracy funding. Like National Endowment for Democracy is known for, like, she was present in Ukraine also during 2014. I forgot her name right now. There's funding from Coca-Cola and other corporates, people associated with Hami, like its mentors and in the board of directors, are known to have contacts with US security apparatus. Also, there have been pro-China developments of late. Nepal has been developing strategic relations with China. Nepal became, under this new communist government in 2017, it became member of the Belt and Road Initiative, and recently also the two countries announced the first rail line between China and Nepal. Why? Because China now has the capability to cut through the Himalayas. Okay, now we come to this Millennial Challenge Cooperation. I think it was sort of ratified in 2017, and immediately it became a point of sort of extreme infighting in the communist movement. It was finally sort of accepted in 2022. Negotiations were going on since 2017. The negotiations were led by basically, or the National Congress was the biggest supporter of it, and initially all the communist parties were quite against it. However, in 2022, it was finally accepted with the support of Communist Party Nepal Maoist Center, Communist Party of Nepal Unified Socialists, I think, and the Communist Party of Nepal Unified Marxist-Leninists, which was at that point in opposition. Despite this was accepted, despite extreme opposition from the from yeah basically from below, from the grassroots. It's regarding $500 million US grant for infrastructure, especially electricity. MCC was created by the US government in 2004 as a development agency, like a separate development agency. However, it is considered by the US national security strategy, like its primary aim is to further US national security agenda. How? Basically, MCC was conceived as part of US security strategy to bring in political elites from the small and low income countries, like to basically, I would say, I think roughly we can understand it as developing contacts with or strengthening the comprador elements in these countries. And as recent as August 2025, Oli, like Kape Oli from CPN UML, welcomed John Wingle, Deputy Vice President of MCC, to Kathmandu to hold talks about resumption of the US aid. Okay, this is sort of the question of the US involvement, and I think it brings also the point of the US involvement in the last 4 years. Like in 2022, there was a regime change in Sri Lanka, where this Rajapaksa political family was sort of removed from power because they started to it was started to be seen as a pro-China and Russia political regime, and in place. One Vikramasinghe was made the how do you say the interim prime minister, which held on to the post for quite some time, and he was sort of a darling of the IMF. Yeah, immediately also started bringing in very strong IMF condition loans also. Then in 2023, I think Imran Khan, which was quite like a bourgeois political candidate, but quite progressive, a people's candidate, I would say, had started developing closer ties with Russia and had openly started talking about inspiring oneself on the from the development from the Chinese development model. And he was brought down in a coup by the Pakistani military army. But what is like really sort of known, or at least as I understand, is that it was done with the involvement of the US. Then in 2024, there was a regime change in Bangladesh also. Sheikh Hasina, which was sort of it was being considered a pro-China sort of a government, was brought down. Like she basically accused that she said no to the US military establishment to use one island near Bangladesh, I think Saint Marine's Island. And also, she was not allowing the US government to open a corridor from Bangladesh to Myanmar, which the new Prime Minister, Mohammad Yunus, like again a darling of the neoliberalism, poster child of World Bank, we can talk more about it later. He has immediately opened this corridor to Myanmar, which is seen as a move against China in Myanmar. And Myanmar is strategically extremely important for China. We can definitely talk more about it later if there are questions. Finally, there's the question of return to monarchy. In March 2000, I think this is really important. I think this will basically tell us that the pro-monarchy and reactionary and imperialist elements had been mobilizing for quite some time, and they were basically sort of waiting for a trigger and also pressuring for the government to make some error. In March 2025, there was two at least strong pro-monarchy mobilizations, opposite demo by pro-socialist elements also. Pro-monarchy protests were turned violent also. They vandalized CPN Unified Socialist Office also. The pro-monarchy movement formed the Joint Coordination Committee. Many within the NC favored the return of monarchy. Accusation also on the leadership of CPN UML of having pro-monarchy sentiments. Overall, the pro-monarchy, this is my thesis, but I think this is quite well known also. I think many are saying this. The pro-monarchy and other reactionary elements began mobilizing, waiting for a trigger. The question of monarchy also brings the question of Indian influence, because the army, which was completely absent on 8th and 9th of September, is said to have close ties to monarchy, and uh, also close ties to the Indian army, and overall the Nepali army played the questionable role. didn't come to the protection of the government and the democratic institutions. Like it wasn't seen anywhere at all. The questionable role is highlighted by CPIML as well. Army is after army took over. It is said that army wanted actually an even more pro-monarchy interim prime minister. Then HSS, which is a which is the international wing of RSS, the Indian fascist organization, which is currently in power. This HSS, Hindu Swam Sevak, like Hindu self-help group, is strongly organized in Nepal with many, many chapters. It was active. It has been active during the March protests. It was active recently also. Interestingly, the protests did not at all target the offices of HSS. There was also strong influence of Yogi Adityanath in these protests. Like his pictures were seen. Yogi Adityanath is an extreme right-wing chief minister from the Indian state, which neighbors almost completely Nepal. Vijay Prasad says that the Hindu right is the only capable force of taking over the political control of the state. Like not the communists, not anyone else. Like the Hindu right, the monarchy elements are the only force which has the organization, Bundesweit organization, to take control over political control over the state. Okay, final thesis: a compromised anti-capitalist, anti-feudal communist movement, strong influence of foreign and reactionary elements in a vacuum left by the progressive forces. Like progressive forces have delegitimized themselves. However, the demands of the people, the frustrations of the people are definitely quite legitimate.